me in the spot where the floppies be. Till I give it a read, keep it crisp in the sleeve. Every Tuesday night feels like Christmas Eve. Living between Wednesdays.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Once again, I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews. Today at the amazing VonCon. And today on stage, I'm joined by Roger Christian, multiple award-winning filmmaker, most known probably for Star Wars A New Hope as the art decorator, set decorator. Roger, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Do I do it in this?
Yeah.
We do it to this one or?
Yeah.
What is this one?
That'll be for here.
Okay.
Awesome.
Hi, welcome everybody to VonCon.
So, almost every single person in this room, without doubt, without question, has seen Star Wars, has seen your work. For the folks out there who don't know, myself included, what is it that a set director or a set decorator does?
In those days, I had to make every single thing, prop, vehicle. I had to make R2-D2. I had to make Luke's lightsaber, Luke's binoculars, make Tatooine into another planet from Tunisia background. I had to do everything.
Wow.
John Barry designed the film with George, and then I had to do everything else involved in Star Wars.
Wow.
In the first one.
Yeah.
And then I worked, he had me be a second director with George on Return of the Jedi and on The Phantom Menace.
Which I saw in theaters when I was a kid. Thank you. So, I mean, there's so many questions we could ask. I think when it comes to your involvement with Star Wars, I guess why don't we start with the location? So a lot of the shots are done on sets or done with special effects, but in fact, some of them are done live on location, Tatooine specifically. How is it that Tunisia became Tatooine?
Because on the first film, we had no money. We had very, very tiny budget. And John Barry, the designer, had designed the little prince in Tunisia. And so the budget was so tight, and we're based in England. We were making the film there because we were cheaper than America.
Oh, okay.
He took George to show him, from George's description of an ancient kind of dusty world, like a spaghetti western, and a Ralph McQuarrie painting which showed the same. He knew we could do it in Tunisia, which was very, very cheap at the time. So he went, found all the locations, Luke's home, and Mos Eisley, all of those. And then my job was to go and put in technology that showed there was something beneath the surface, and to get everything built. And in fact, it wasn't called Tatooine in the original script. Changed the name when he saw this sign to Tatooine, and John showed him a beautiful location, which in fact we used on Phantom Menace. It wasn't used on Star Wars, that one, but Mos Eisley location and right down in the desert in the south was where we built the Sandcrawler, Luke's home, the outside, and in Mount Martyr, the big hole in the ground where he lived.
Yeah.
So I had to take stuff down. We had, in the Mos Eisley set, which is the exterior of the cantina, there was an olive tree that spoilt the dusty landscape. So we built a 747, Boeing 747 size crash spaceship.
Wow.
That hid the olive tree. And in fact, that became the Star Wars kind of canon from then on. In every film, there's a crash spaceship in there. Even Rey lives in crash spaceships and blunders.
Yeah.
Yeah, that came from that.
Interesting. So, one thing that I read and I researched on to do this with you is you very often actually use old warplane parts to do just like you did. You built a 747 to hide an olive tree. Why are you sort of drawn, do you think, to plane parts? Is it the mechanisms? Is it just the size, the structure? What makes you like them?
It came down to, I wanted to do that look. That was my first conversation with George, and that I thought science fiction before Star Wars was too designed and cold, and he wanted a spaghetti western in space, and that was my idea, to do everything really grungy and old. And we only had 2.5 months preparation, and most science fiction films would have a year. And I had no money to build anything in the studios, so I thought if I break down scrap airplanes, I could put them in and make it like a submarine in space. That's how I built the Millennium Falcon. All the interiors are based out of old telephone exchange pieces, PVC piping, and basically I could buy any aeroplane part that was junked. There were massive piles of it around the airports in junkyards. I could buy half a crashed aeroplane for £50 in those days. So I bought in masses of it, and basically we built the interior of the Millennium Falcon like that.
It's so cool.
What? No?
So one thing that, again, Star Wars brought to that, like you were talking about, just cobbling together things, is the idea of sort of a used universe, right? A lot of sci-fi prior to Star Wars, everything was clean, glossy, polished. And then with Star Wars, all of a sudden, things were dusty, sandy, dirty, beat up. Why go that direction? Why not keep it clean? What made you want to go that way?
Because I'm part of the audience, even though I was working in movies, and I thought science fiction movies never connected to an audience because they never believed what they were watching. Flash Gordon has obviously got all his fans, but it's you can't identify with it. I never saw science fiction like that. I prefer the grungy, dirty kind of used look. That's how it would be. You get ships flying in space. Nothing is going to be like that. And then Ralph McQuarrie paintings gave us an idea of what it should be like, but it was basically mine even from childhood. I always wanted it to look like that. And if you think about it in the script, Luke says, what a pile of junk, when he's talking about the Millennium Falcon. So I made it like a pile of junk, but it's got a heart of gold like Han. This thing is going to beat everybody else and survive. And that, to me, the underdog is more relatable to an audience than the big flashing hero who can do everything.
Amazing. I love it. One thing I guess I did want to ask is, in the original film, I watched earlier this week, when you're looking at the interior sets of the Falcon, specifically the cantina, because it's so busy, I was wondering, have you, or at the time, did you hide anything in there? Any, bauble from home, a picture, anything that if someone who knew you'd worked on it, they would see it and they would know?
No, I don't think so. There's a few things that we stuck in the robots where they're doing the lineup and they're buying them. There were a few there like that. My only there was one robot that I painted to look like a different kind of science fiction artist, and that one I did. But otherwise, no, I just used junk and whatever I could find, and bits of old cameras, anything that, because there were no computers in those days, there's no CGI. And so I had to make do with whatever I could find.
I love it. Now, talking about bits of old cameras, every single person, I think, ever since Star Wars has come out knows what a lightsaber is. There's folks just outside selling really cool ones. There's a couple folks, cosplayers, holding some. You built the first lightsaber. You actually went out and built the thing. Please tell us that story.
Well, I had to come up with all the weapons, and I used old guns for every blaster, every gun, Han Solo's gun. They're all real weapons because that's how I wanted to look. I couldn't find anything that would warrant a weapon of a Jedi, which I thought had to be very, very special. And I had to make Luke's binoculars.
Oh.
And I built those out of 3 old cameras. I stuck on 2 lenses, so I went to the camera house shop and bought 2, stuck them on the front with super glue, asked the owner, do you have anything that might be used for a sword or a handle? Because it was near to shooting and I hadn't found anything.
Oh, okay.
And he pointed me to some boxes that were below a shelf and said, go and have a look over there. I don't know what's in there. And the first box I pulled out, there were the Graflex handles Graflex were the press cameras used in the 40s.
Oh, okay.
And there were 3 in the box. I pulled it out and just went, oh, I found Holy Grail. I loved the look.
Yeah.
And I could have used it just like that, but I raced back to the studios, stuck the T-strip that I stuck around the blaster for the stormtroopers. I had some left over, so I stuck 7 with super glue and made a handle. And I had an old calculator I'd broken down and got some bubble strip, put that in the clip, because I didn't like the clip, and showed George. And that became Luke's Skywalker's lightsaber. And well, I made it for, I don't know, $15. And I made quite a few of them because I had to build the handle. We put in a wooden rod and painted it with front projection material that flowed because no one knew how to do it then.
Yeah.
And that kind of worked. And also we made a decision the sword should be like Excalibur, like real swords. They wouldn't go through. So when Alec Guinness was fighting Dave Prowse and Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi were fighting, they could hit the sticks and know where to stop. They were balsa wood, they broke quite a few, but it worked. And then we built Obi-Wan Kenobi's, which has a piece of a rifle grenade. It's actually a World War II grenade.
Oh, that's so cool.
And a piece of a Rolls-Royce Derwent engine. That's the main 2 components in that one. Again, it was no cost. And I didn't have time to make any. And then we made all the other lightsabers, went from then on in.
Wow. When you're assembling the parts, obviously these random pieces of cameras, engines, Rolls Royces, whatever, they're not built to go together. They don't have rivets. They don't have, the parts that will screw together. Was it a lot of glue? Was it welding? How did you actually get them to stick together and be a thing?
Super glue. I have boxes of it in my office. My fingerprints are still ruined from those days. And in fact, the first things we ever built I'd made in secret were the Han Solo's blaster.
Oh, okay.
And the Stormtroopers blasters. And I did it in secret, stuck them all together and showed George because I didn't know if I'd be fired or hired. And so I was hired. George stayed with me then. He liked the way I was doing it. And we made Princess Leia's gun, so he got covered in super glue as well. But I had a prop making assistant I'd hired. It was a new job in the industry.
Okay.
And he had a bit more equipment than me. So he kind of stuck on the D-ring on the end of the blues because I didn't have anything in my office to do.
Nice.
But most of it was just stuck together and made it work. And then, like R2-D2, again, when George came to England, there was no money to do anything. We were 4 months. I'd hired a carpenter, and he had some wooden homes, so we had to make it work. we found Kenny Baker, and he built with wood from his house. And I found a lamp top that we bought for 10 shillings. And that fitted on the top, and then I stuck things in it. Even his little handles, you can see the hands on the front. I carved those the penknife.
Nice.
And that, we made him walk eventually, and that became R2D2.
That's so cool. So then, one thing I have to ask. So the original R2D2, the actor inside of the robot, that was a lot to work with, and he had to be mobile. We see him on screen sort of do that iconic waddle. At times he comes out with the wheel and he rolls around. How many iterations of R2 were there to get it functional for screen, as well as later on?
That's a good question. So we made the walking one, and in fact, the only way he could walk, I stuck an old aircraft fighter pilot's harness. We stapled it inside, and Kenny could wear R2 like a rucksack, and then he could make it walk. And there were the 3-legged version. When we got the first thing we ever shot in Tunisia was buying the robots by the Secord-Reitz.
Oh, okay.
The special effects guy kept promising the radio control would work, and it never did. And we built a secret R2D2 in fiberglass that we could pull along on fishing wire.
Oh.
And after the first shot, when R2D2 fell over and crashed, George just said, "Get it out," and we put a board down with sand, and we pulled them along. Most of that scenes in Tunisia, the ones in 3 wheels, we pulled them along. And then Kenny could wobble a bit and move it a little bit. If you watch the scene of buying the robots, R2D2's hardly in it, because George had to cut him out because he wasn't working very well. So that's all we had too.
Yeah, that is amazing. Like, I love that you were able to, in the universe where things seem cobbled together, you were literally doing that to make stuff work. Now, one thing that when I'm interviewing comic artists, I often ask them is, what do you hate to draw? And all the time they'll say, we hate horses, we hate cars or fences, because it's hard to draw them correctly to make them look right. Now, from a film perspective, I was wondering, when you're working in Tunisia, you're building these sets, you're filming, is there anything that, looking back now, you would be like, I'm never working on that again, it was hard, you just didn't enjoy it?
No, I loved every moment of Star Wars, every single, and I had very little sleep for a year. We worked 7 days a week, no days off, nothing. And the rest of the crew, it's now common knowledge, thought that George was making a pile of crap that would never be seen. And even the DP was so rude to George all the way through, hating it. I stuck by George with John Barry and one art director, and we just said, we're going to get the film made. And I'm just very resilient. I didn't care what people told me. We were doing a dream job. This was like, I was a fan in those days. And I think that, I've written a book about it, Cinema Alchemist, because it's never ever been documented, anything that John Barry and I ever did. No making of documentaries, nothing. And I've now finished the documentary. But I was kind of forced to write the book because the legacy of how Star Wars came to be was never told. And the last line in my book is, do not let anyone tell you you can't, you can. And that's a dogged kind of resilience that is stood me in good stead throughout the whole film. making careers so far, because we're always faced with the impossibility. And George hired us. We were all like students. We were young, had a bit of experience, but not enough to say, no, God, we don't do it like that. This is how it works. We had to find ways to make it work, and that's the fun of it, you know. And the only thing that made that possible was because George directed THX 1138, which he did low budget on the streets in San Francisco. So he knew what we were doing to get this up to. It's more than that. I'm very proud because George has given a global, not just an audience, anybody, something to believe in, which is the right kind of attitude, and where religions aren't connecting to youth so well, Star Wars does, and it's the right kind of audience. And I knew when I read the script, because I was a big fan of Excalibur and King Arthur, and I knew the lightsaber would become the symbol of this world, and it's a sword of light. You know, we're going to try, we always will defeat darkness.
Hell yeah.
It's very important, all of this. So that's why I support Star Wars so much.
I love it. That's amazing. Thank you. One thing that I did want to ask about, after Star Wars, you ended up working on 2 more films with George. How'd that happen?
Well, George, in those days there was no ads or trailers. We had a short film and a main film. George didn't like the short film that went out with Star Wars, so I'd written a little kind of ancient epic.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this, but that was sent to George, and he said he would commission it. The British government gave me a £25,000 grant, so I went and filmed it in Scotland, and George attached it to Empire Strikes Back. And then he was doing the second unit on Return of the Jedi, and if you look at the 3, Empire Strikes Back is often a fan favorite, but it's actually an adult movie, and it's George's least favorite, because if you look at Star Wars, his audience is 9 to 12-year-old children.
Yeah.
Empire is an adult film, and then so he wanted it back. So he then decided he had to spend more time on the first unit with the director to make sure what he wanted. So they just called me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm waiting for the finance for my movie." And they asked me to just drive straight up to the stage and take over. I got to film Han Solo being woken in the carbon freeze. That was, they couldn't fit Harrison in, so I got that one. I did loads and I did 10 days of Ewoks, which George loved. And I kept asking him, "Could I please do something else?" He said, no, I love the Ewoks. So I was making Warwick Davis do cartwheels and all sorts of dancing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was fun. And then when he did Phantom Menace, George doesn't like shooting very much. And it was a 20-something week schedule. He cut it down to 12. So they asked me to take over half of the film. And we had the 2 crews who made Young Indy, the TV series. And that was awesome. I got to film most of Darth Maul's fights. I got to film the first meeting ever of R2-D2 and C-3PO when the immortal line says naked. What do you mean naked?
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher wrote that line.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she was very clever. So I got a ton of stuff to shoot with Liam, with Natalie, with everybody. Yeah, it was and then George had to leave. I finished the film. I did the last 5 or 10 days of shooting on Phantom Menace. But by then I knew George so well, and there was a friendship and a kind of kinship, and he knew that I would be respectful. The second unit directors, they're usually trying to get a job, so they're trying to impress the producer, and they're doing stuff that you don't need in the film. I never did that. I always, because I had second unit directors of my own, I had to work out how to control.
Amazing. That is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. One thing that I did want to ask about, you mentioned earlier the film that was put in front of Star Wars in the UK. I believe it was UK, Australia, and a third region. Sweden. Thank you. Yeah. Now, that is Black Angel, which was a short film of your own making. And between now and then, or I guess then and now, there was a lot of change. It's kind of an interesting story what happened with that. But there's a new development. So what's going on with Black Angel?
When I made it, I had £25,000 and a crew of 9. And I was the first person to ever shoot Scotland in all this mystical, amazing beauty. And what happened, it went out in about 480 cinemas. It was everywhere where it was shown. The negative got lost.
Yeah.
And I kept getting letters and inquiries, and can we see this film? And I had letters when it went out from all over the world saying, you've really touched my kind of deep inside, and I made it for that reason as a myth. So the negative got found. All the negatives were in Universal Studios, and it was invited to be restored by a San Francisco group who restored some of Star Wars.
Okay.
And I showed it in 4 cinemas in Scotland. And in the first one, this woman stood up at the Q&A and said, I have to tell you something. I was the original producer of Game of Thrones, the pilot.
Oh!
And she said, your little film was their influence. And they used the locations. They lost it from Scotland. It went to Ireland because they had studios. We didn't have that.
Okay.
And it went viral, that screening, on the internet. And I was then asked would I make a feature of it? So I thought I would, but the problem is Game of Thrones has done it so well. They own that wintry, mystical look. So I thought I'll be looking like I'm copying them now. So I went back to our Star Wars days, and I'm doing it like an ancient epic, but a spaghetti western style. We're shooting in Morocco, and we're shooting that later this year, beginning of next year.
Congrats.
And I've got John Rhys-Davies as one of the leads, who's Gimli from Lord of the Rings. And I made a movie, quite a big one, Nostradamus. I have my lead from that, Jackie Cario, Toby Kebbell, who was the co-lead in Prince of Persia, a lot of movies. Wonderful actors, they're all cast. And so we're shooting that again, but I'm doing it like Star Wars, very low budget, independent. I like it that way, so you can make a pure vision of what it should be.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's come back. So you have to be resilient in this industry. But I'd always wanted to do it. Now we're finally doing it.
That is absolutely awesome. Well, I did want to say, one, thank you so much for taking the time to come. One, to Vaughn, Colin, people can find you on the table just outside the doors on the right. You have your book here.
Yes, I do.
For the folks at home, or maybe after today when they leave, I believe I saw on Amazon your film. They can go out and check it out. As sort of a last question, let us know about the film, about the new film on Amazon.
Oh, this. Do you mean the Galaxy Built on Hope? So that's what's happened. Because of the head of Lucasfilm pushed me to write the book because there's no record. I'm the only one who knows all the stories, so I had to do it. Then I got pushed to do a documentary based on that with live interviews, which, as I started it, COVID hit. So I was landlocked here in Canada. I couldn't get out. Guillermo del Toro, who is a huge fan, who I know, he's throughout the documentary giving his points of view. He's very erudite. Gareth Edwards, who directed Rogue One, his new film now, The Creator's just coming out, he right throughout it. They're helping me explain what Star Wars is and what we did. There was a 2-hour 20 fan special, and it's got everything in there. Where the lightsabers came from, building R2-D2, interviews with people who nobody knows were part of making Star Wars.
Yeah.
So Bill Harmon, who built R2-D2, lives here in Toronto. He came here and worked on films here. So that was available. The original plan was 6 episodes, half hour, which I've split it into now. Now they're trying to sell that. So they pulled it off Amazon for the moment. I'm trying to get the copies back so that we can sell them as fan specials.
Nice.
Everyone loves it. Doug Chang, who's now designed everything on Star Wars, the Mandalorian Star Wars. I mean, he watched it and said, I have learned so much that I never knew. So I thought we should do it as a legacy. So that will be coming.
I love it. Do you have a question?
Hi, it's Joanne from Entertainment Journals. It's called ATV. A pleasure to chat with you. Roger, tell me, what was the most memorable memory you had with working with Star Wars?
I would probably say Luke lighting up the Star Wars, the lightsaber for the very first time when Obi-Wan Kenobi gave it to him. And I remember seeing it finally with the blade coming on and thought, oh yeah, this works. That to me was the most, but I've got about 300 memories.
Fantastic, thank you.
Awesome. Well, absolutely. Once again, Roger, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us and talk Star Wars. And for the folks at home, once again, I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out VonCon. For the people here, go meet Roger, get his book, get some lightsabers signed, and have fun.
And if you want a tattoo of a Star Wars, he's a brilliant artist. I persuaded him to come and do small Star Wars ones. I forbid my son, who's 10, because he wants to go and get one. So
we'll make him wait a little bit on that one. But thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, folks.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Yeah. Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it. True believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover tie-in. High flying, full color or black and white. Splash pages, flashbacks, whet your appetite with new costumes, team ups, first loves, first appearance.